once again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual class for this week. And this week, we are going to talk about human reasoning. So, for you to have a better grasp of what is human reasoning, our objective for this week are the following. At the end of the discussion, you are expected to understand the importance of human reasoning. You are also expected to differentiate the types of human reasoning. And the third one is you are expected to identify the steps for moral reasoning. Now, let us start with our first objective of the week or for the week, and that is to understand what is the importance of human reasoning. To understand the importance of human reasoning, it is essential that we need to understand first the concept of human reasoning and the concept of reason. And to do so, we will start with understanding what is the concept of reason. Reason is the capacity for consciously making sense of things, establishing and verifying facts, applying logic, and changing or justifying practices, institutions, and beliefs based on new or existing information. What does it mean? Reason, just like what our definition for today says, is our capacity to consciously making sense of things. How do we make sense of things? We make sense of things by connecting different facts, by establishing different facts and or different ideas, different concepts, different evidences, or different statements. Applying logic to logically connect what are the relations of this important matter. Reason is basically answering the question why. It is establishing an explanation on the connection of two different variables or two different interesting topics, just like what we have done in our activity. Okay? So, in reason, in order for us to successfully establish a connection between two different scenario, two different instances, two different statements, so on and so forth, it is important that we were able to establish and verify the facts. And that is what we call reason. Okay? Reason is basically connecting two different stories, two different facts, two different statements to make a conclusion. And that's how we make sense of things. Okay? So that's how we define reason for our discussion this week. Now, since we've already identified or understand the concept of reason, it is now important that we understand the concept of human reasoning. To understand the concept of human reasoning is to understand the concept of reasoning. Here in our definition, it says that human reasoning is our sense of obligation to do what is right, even if we do not want to do it. But before we tackle or go deeper with this definition, let's try to connect first our conceptualization of reason from or to human reasoning. So earlier, I've said that reason is a capacity to make sense of things or to connect different statements, to connect different facts, no, to make conclusions. Now, what is the connection of reason to human reasoning? Basically, reason is innate or unique only to human. Because we are the only species in this world that can create or think, reason intuitively. We are the only creature in the kingdom Animalia that can create conclusions based on different facts, based on different things, based on different ideas, based on different concepts. That is why the connection of reason in human reasoning is that reason is the capability of human to make sense of things, to explain what is happening around us. Therefore, we call it as human reasoning. Human reasoning in the field of knowing or in the field of metaphysics, philosophy, the understanding of Immanuel Kant, human reasoning is basically the power of human to make conclusions. Hence, as you have noticed, reason or the conceptualization of reason is actually pertaining to the conceptualization of human reasoning. Okay, so reason and human reasoning or human reasoning in general is the capacity of human to make conclusion based on various facts. It is the capacity of human to connect different concepts and make conclusions. This is our way of finding ways to connect different ideas so that we will be able to make a conclusion. Now, if we were able to connect conclusion based on our definition for today, human reasoning is now our sense of obligation to do what is right, even if we do not want to do it. This is the ethical understanding of human reasoning. Okay? The idea that I'm talking to you earlier that human reasoning is our capacity to connect two different statements or two different ideas and create a conclusion is the um is the aspect of knowing or the aspect of thinking for human being. But when it comes to ethical standard, human reasoning now becomes our sense of obligation to do what is right. And what is the connection of the ethical understanding of human reasoning to our idea of human reasoning with the concept of connecting two different or two different concepts? When we were able or when we are capable of understanding or explaining why certain things happens, why certain matters occurs, it will give us the idea that some things happen for a reason. And when some things happen for a reason, there might be instances why we tend to think that we are experiencing certain phenomena or certain situations in our life. Hence, with the help of our mental capability to produce or to have the human reasoning, it is now become eminent to us to have our capacity to do what we think is right. Because that is the ethical understanding of human reasoning. Okay? Now, in human reasoning, our ability to reason is an important part of who we are and how we make sense of the world around us, and as well as how we form relationships and interact with others. In our past discussion, I have discussed that moral standard or ethical standard has its own basis. Okay, we have our own definition. We have our very own standards of morality. For example, in India, there are some instances that Indians considered as a right thing to do, while here in the Philippines we considered it as a wrong thing to do. There's also instances wherein here in the Philippines, there are things that we considered as a right thing to do, but in India, Indians considered it as a wrong thing to do. Therefore, based on our culture, based on our beliefs, based on our political understanding, based on our attitude, social norms, and the values that we have in our life, it will now affect how we make uh, ethical or moral decisions. Hence, human reasoning comes in. Okay? Because in human reasoning, no, just like what I am saying, it is our idea of how we connect things. And in human reasoning, it connects human on how we make sense of the world. It connects us to our roots. It explains us why we are doing certain matters. Okay? Now, with that, human reasoning can be a tool that can help or guide an individual to do or act in accordance with moral and ethical standard. And that is why human reasoning is our sense of obligation. Because if you have human reasoning, you were able to connect yourself to your cultural, social values and political beliefs that will make you think that this is the reason why I am doing this. This is the explanation why I need to become a good son, why I need to become a good Filipino citizen. This is the reason why I need to become very careful on what I am saying, because this is our religion. This is our religion. This is my beliefs. This is my social norms. And that is reasoning. You are connecting everything to make an explanation or to make sense on what is happening. Okay? So that is our capacity, or that is our concept of what we call human reasoning. Now, that is the importance why we have human reasoning. With that, let us discuss now what are the different types of human reasoning. So we've already know that human reasoning is our capability to make conclusion, to make explanation, to make sense of what is happening around us, or connecting everything that we can connect. Now, in types of human reasoning, there are different ways on how we connect matters, on how we connect things. And those are deductive, inductive, and abductive. We also have what we call fallacious reasoning. Fallacious reasoning is a kind of connecting different concepts, different ideas that are illogically, or logically wrong, or illogical, or unsound arguments. Therefore, fallacious reasoning is a kind of thinking where people are committing mistakes, on connecting or explaining different matter. Here, we will focus first on what are the ways that we correctly reason out as human beings. So what are the ways people, or human beings reason out? The first one is what we call deductive reasoning. Always remember that when we say deductive, deduct, di ba? From the general idea, you deduct so that you will create a specific explanation. That's why it is called deductive reasoning. Now, to understand further what is deductive reasoning, let us define it and I will provide an explanation so that you will understand what is the concept all about. Deductive reasoning starts out with a general statement, or there is a general hypothesis. Then we examine the possibilities to reach a specific logical conclusion. What do we mean by specific? Out of that general idea, you need to have a specific example or a specific relation based on your general idea. Logical conclusion, there should be a logical pattern. Okay? Your conclusion is based on logical understanding. It means hindi gawa-gawa, or you are not making up things. Okay? There is a logical sequence. Now, in deductive reasoning, it is when you take two true statements or two true premises, then you create a conclusion. So, for example, our general statement is that letter A is equal to letter B. And our second general statement is that letter B is also equal to letter C. Now, what can be our specific understanding of this matter? We can say that A is equal to C. Okay? And that is how we make deductive reasoning. Okay? Now, to understand that better, let's have our narrative example. So for our narrative example, for our narrative example, we have here two general statements. What are our two general statements? First, all numbers ending in 0 are divisible by 5. That is our first statement. Second statement, all numbers ending in 5 are divisible by 5. That is our second general statement. What have you noticed? These are two general concepts or ideas. Now, we will make a specific example out of this general statement so that we can say that our reasoning is based on deductive reasoning. So I can say that the number 35 ends with a 5, so it must be divisible by 5. Okay? So that's how we conclude using deductive reasoning. We base our conclusion based on general concepts. Okay? Or general ideas. Another example would be like this. All spiders, my first general statement is that all spiders have 8 legs. Black Widow, my second general statement, Black Widow is an example of spider. It's a type or a species of spider. Therefore, Black Widow has 8 legs. Because from my general understanding, all spiders have 8 legs. And tarantula or Black Widow is an example or a species of spiders. Now, if I'm going to count the legs of a spider, specifically a Black Widow or tarantula, I can say that Black Widow has 8 legs. And that's how we conclude using deductive reasoning. Understood? How about inductive reasoning? Inductive reasoning is a kind of reasoning or making conclusion or connecting facts out of specific examples. So, in deductive, you make conclusion based on general ideas. Here in inductive, we call this the bottom-up approach. From the bottom, which are the specific examples, you will now create your general conclusion. So inductive reasoning makes broad generalization from specific observations. For example, I want you to look at the second example. Second example is first statement. I normally leave work after 6 p.m. and I usually able to avoid traffic. Second statement, as long as I leave work after 6 p.m., I will always miss traffic. That is the second specific statement. Now, what would be the general understanding from these two statements? We can say that after 6 p.m., there is no more traffic. Understood? And that is inductive reasoning. Another example would be like this. For example, you have a fruit basket full of mangoes. Now, the first time that you pick or you took a mango out of that fruit basket, you've noticed that the mango that you've picked is already ripe. The second time that you pick a mango out of that fruit basket is that it is also ripe. And the third time that you pick a mango from that fruit basket, you've noticed that it is also ripe. Now, what can be our general conclusion about that? We can say that the fruit basket contains all ripe mangoes. And that is how we make conclusions based on inductive reasoning or using inductive reasoning. Now, another difference from deductive and inductive reasoning is that in deductive reasoning, if general statements can be true and can be logically true and definitely true. Okay, because you're just bringing example or you're just giving example out of a general concept. So your conclusion would be always true or in accordance with what your general idea is. While inductive reasoning, sometimes it is a true or correct generalization and sometimes it can be false. Okay? Sometimes it's true that or sometimes it's correct that our generalization is a right generalization based on our specific examples, but sometimes is wrong. For example, in our first example here, when you normally leave your work after 6 p.m. and you usually avoid traffic, then you says that as long as you leave work after 6 p.m., you will always miss traffic. You can generalize that after 6 p.m. there is no traffic. But in reality, there are some instances that after 6 p.m. there is still traffic. Therefore, conclusions made out of inductive reasoning can be sometimes true or sometimes false. Okay? Another example would be on the mangoes. Not because you've managed to took three ripe mangoes from the fruit basket, you can now conclude that all the mangoes in that basket are ripe. Okay? There might be some instances where we can say that the fruit or the mango in that fruit basket can be raw. And that is why inductive reasoning may be false at some point. Okay? Now, aside from deductive and inductive, we have here what we call abductive reasoning. What is abductive reasoning? Abductive reasoning is not deductive nor inductive. Abductive is a kind of reasoning that usually starts with an incomplete set of observation. and proceed to the likeliest possible explanation for the group of observation. Here, you make conclusions by connecting different evidences or different facts based on probability that that the incident happened because of a certain cause. There's no exact logical sequence that will tell you that a certain phenomenon happened because there is a certain cause. That is what we call abductive reasoning. What is an example of abductive reasoning? For example, here, a person walks into their living room and finds torn up papers all over the floor. The person's dog has been alone in the room all day. The person concludes that the dog turned up the papers because it is most likely the scenario. How would you differentiate abductive from deductive to inductive? In deductive, you make conclusion because there is a general idea. There's a definite example where you will base your specific understanding. And in inductive, you base your you base your conclusion based on what you've experienced. Okay? In abductive, you try to connect facts which you think is the most possible or the likeliest that happened. And especially here in our example, you can see that when you leave a dog alone all day in a room, and then when you came home, you've seen that your papers are already torn up, or your slippers are already beaten by your dog, your sofa has a poop, so on and so forth. You can say that those scenarios were caused by the dog because it's the dog who would most probably do those things. What have you noticed? You're able to conclude that the dog is the one who is responsible for those mess, even without evidences, even without logical explanation that would tell you, oh, it's the dog. Because I've seen the dog doing it. You cannot say that because in reality you did not see the dog. But since you have the capability to connect everything, and in abductive reasoning, we connect things even though there is an incomplete facts. We connect things because we think it is the most possible thing to happen. And that is what we call abductive reasoning. Okay, so we are now already done in our first two objectives. The first one is to understand the importance of human reasoning. Basically, the importance of human reasoning is that it connects us to our moral and ethical senses so that we can be obliged to do what is right, even though we don't want to do it, because that is how we make sense of the things. The second is the different types of reasoning. Okay? Inductive, deductive, and abductive. Now, in human reasoning, there's some instances where we make false understanding, or we make mistakes. In short, we can say that our mind or the human brain is better and smarter than computers. It is true. Although computers can search things 3.5 billion to 4 billion per seconds, the human brain can only search things for, or can only recall things 500 500 ops per second. So in that case, computer is more superior than the human brain. But what makes our brain smarter than the computer? Our brain is very flexible. Our brain are trainable. It can learn things, it can unlearn things, so on and so forth. So, in that sense, we can make better understanding of the things. While computer only works because of algorithms. And when we do not update those algorithms, the computers will most likely be will create mistakes no on its job to do searches, so on and so forth. But since the brain is very flexible, no, we do not rely on simple algorithms. So our brain is basically smarter than the computer. However, brains do makes more mistakes, or brain do a lot of mistakes, while the computer mistakes can happen if there is error within about algorithms. Hence, some of the instances where humans make mistake about reasoning is what we call fallacious reasoning. Okay? Fallacious reasonings or fallacies are mistaken beliefs based on unsound arguments. They derive from reasoning that is logically incorrect, thus undermining an argument's validity. Do not be confused. In your high school days, perhaps, or your senior high school days, or when you've already taken your philosophy class in college, there are hundreds of fallacies that you will encounter or you have encountered. But here in our discussion for today, I'm going to talk about three major fallacies that we have or that we are encountering. Okay? For us to understand that some instances, the human mind makes mistake in reasoning, in connecting different ways, or in making conclusion. The first fallacy that our human mind always the first mistake that our mind always commit is what we call ad hominem. Ad hominem is a kind of fallacy wherein the argument is often a personal attack on someone's character or motive rather than an attempt to address the actual issue at hand. For example, you've given a statement, and the person answered you back and said, "Oh, your statement is wrong because that is not like you." That is what we call ad hominem. And to put it in other perspective, let's try to read our example in this presentation. The first one is, sabi, "Mother, you should stop smoking. It's harmful to your health." What is the answer of the daughter? "Why should I listen to you? You started smoking when you were 16. What was the mistake, or what is the mistake of the daughter? He attacked the personality of her parent, not the statement of her parent. So if the daughter thinks that smoking is good, she should provide evidences or facts that will shoot down the argument of her mother that smoking is harmful. But instead of doing that, what she did, she attacked her mother personally. And that is an example of ad hominem fallacies. Okay? The second fallacy is what we call appeal to authority. Appeal to authority fallacy is insisting that a claim is true simply because a valid authority or expert on the issue said it was true without any supporting evidence offered. So it is simply stating that your argument is true. For example, a scientist, it is a a common mistake that we say it is true because it is said by this expert without valid examples. The usual examples of appeal to authority are like this. In Colgate, I hope there's Colgate also in India. In Colgate, what the Colgate is trying to say is that their toothpaste is the best toothpaste in the world because this is what the scientists or this is what the dentists are talking about. So now, in that case, some people would say that, oh, Colgate is the best toothpaste because this dentist told that this is the best Colgate without valid or empirical evidences that would support that Colgate is really the best toothpaste. And that is what we call appeal to authority. Okay? Now, another example would be cosmetics. In cosmetics, what have you noticed in cosmetics? Artists or endorsers always try to make statements that stating that, for example, soap or Kojic is the best whitening soap because Kojic is effective to me. Therefore, Kojic is the best whitening soap. That's an appeal to authority. Not because it is said by the expert, it is now valid and true. We must and we should look for empirical evidences. And the third one is what we call the bandwagon fallacy. In bandwagon fallacy, it is basically appealing to popularity. We are saying that a certain statement is true because majority, if not all of the people, believe it is true. Or we says that something is false because everybody believe it is false. That is bandwagon fallacy. What is the best example of bandwagon fallacy? In Facebook, in social media apps. In Facebook, for example, when we see a statement or a post about certain politician, certain celebrity, and it garners 1,000 likes, or let's say 200,000 likes, 200,000 shares, we now tend to think that the statement of that person, that politician, or that statement is true. Even though logically, empirically, evidently, it is not. That is what we call bandwagon fallacy. We are just riding on what is popular. So, for example, all my friends are doing a low-carb diet. So if your friends, or if all of your friends are doing low-carb diet, you may think that it is the only way to lose weight. And that kind of thinking or reasoning is what we call bandwagon fallacy. Okay? So these are some of tens or hundreds mistakes, no, or fallacies that human reasoning commits when we reason out or make sense of the things. Okay, so we are now done with the first and second objective. For our third objective, the third, but certainly not the least, this is the last, but certainly not the least objective for this week, is steps in making moral and ethical decisions. So what is the connection of this objective with our lesson, our discussion about human reasoning? Just like what I've told you, human reasoning try to oblige people or humans to make sense of the things, and with that, it is empirical, or it is essential that based on how we connect things, how we gathered information, how we gathered facts, is that we decide morally and ethically. So to do that, here are the 7 steps in making a moral or ethical decision. The first one is I want you to stop and think. When making a moral and ethical decision, always relax yourself. Be yourself. No? In our past discussion, in feelings and moral decision, I've told you that at some point, emotions can clouded our understanding. Emotions can eradicate our human reasoning, but it happens for a short period of time. So when you are in an intense emotion, do not decide, so that you will not pagsisisihan uh, your decision. Okay? So I want you to stop and think carefully, no, on how are you going to make a decision. So when you are thinking, I want you to clarify your goals. Think carefully. Why I am doing this? Is this part of my short-term goal, or is this part of my long-term goals? That is part of the thinking process. Okay? It doesn't matter how long it will take you. It will take you, but you need to think carefully so that you will not be you will not you will not be making a bigger or harmful or dangerous mistake. The third one is to determine the facts. Of course, when you are thinking, you should think of the facts. What are the evidences that you've found to make you decide morally and ethically? Be sure that all the facts that you have taken are all accurate, all valid, and all reliable. The fourth one is that when thinking, I want you to develop options. What are the things that you need to do? Are you going to do step A? Are you going to do uh, choice B, choice C, so on and so forth? Then, in developing your options, I want you to consider what are the consequences. Each action has consequences, whether it is good or it is bad. Hence, it is important that in making choices, you know what are the consequences. And in doing so, you need to understand first that all consequences may have negative impact, but you need to look what will be the better or the best option to choose. And that's how you consider the consequences. And the sixth one is to, of course, make a decision. Okay? You will just only make a decision if you were able to think, clarify your goals. You've already taken a lot of information or facts. You've already made your options and you've already made your consequences. Now it's time to make a decision. Do not afraid to make a decision because there's step 7. Step 7 is evaluating your decision. What is the impact of your decision? You should monitor. Then if there is an instances that you need to modify, you need to modify. No, to recalibrate your decision. Do not afraid to fail. Because most successful person or people in this world at some point failed in their life. And do not be afraid of failure. Be afraid of failure if that failure is constant. But if you've failed and you tried another or different step, then you failed again, you tried different or another step, you failed again, just move on because you are on the right track. Okay? But if you failed on the same mistake and failed on the same mistake again, that's the time you need to reevaluate. Okay? Because you need to learn from your mistake. And that is how you monitor and modify your decisions in life. Okay? Always remember that our lesson or our class is about morality, and ethics. Hence, we should think or decide morally and ethically. Okay? So that ends our discussion for this week. Thank you so much for listening.